Imagine 9 experienced hikers, deep in the brutal Russian winter of the Ural Mountains, suddenly slashing their way out of their tent in the middle of the night, fleeing into the sub-zero darkness without proper clothing or shoes. What could possibly have been so terrifying that they chose a certain freezing death over staying inside? This isn't the start of a horror movie. It's the real, baffling mystery of the Dyatlov Pass Incident. In February 1959, a group of students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, all seasoned in wilderness treks, set out on a challenging expedition. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was aiming for the highest grade of certification. They were skilled, prepared, and in high spirits. They meticulously documented their journey with diaries and photographs, painting a picture of a normal, albeit tough, adventure. Then one night, something went catastrophically wrong. When they failed to check in at their destination, a search party was sent out. What they found on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a mountain whose name ominously translates to Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language, has puzzled investigators for over 60 years. The search team first discovered the group's tent. It was half buried in snow, but the chilling part was that it had been sliced open from the inside. All the group's belongings, their boots, warm clothing, food, and equipment, were left behind. It was as if they had fled in a blind panic. Footprints in the snow led down the slope towards a tree line about a mile away. The tracks showed that some were barefoot, others wearing only socks, and one person wore a single shoe. It was clear they weren't just taking a casual stroll. They were running for their lives. Beneath a large cedar tree at the edge of the forest, the rescuers found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They were dressed only in their underwear. Their hands were burned, and the branches of the cedar tree above them were broken up to 15 feet high, suggesting they had desperately tried to climb it, perhaps to see something or escape from something. A small, hastily built fire lay nearby. 3 more bodies, including Igor Dyatlov himself, were found between the cedar tree and the camp. Their positions suggested they were trying to crawl back up the slope to the relative safety of the tent. They had all died of hypothermia. So far, a tragic but perhaps explainable story. But this was only the beginning. The real mystery unfolded 2 months later, in May, when the snow began to melt. The remaining 4 hikers were discovered in a ravine, buried under more than 10 feet of snow, about 250 feet away from the cedar tree. And their injuries were horrifying. Lyudmila Dubinina had massive chest trauma, with several broken ribs, similar to injuries sustained in a high-speed car crash. Semyon Zolotaryov had similar crushing chest injuries. Both of them, along with another hiker, were missing their eyes, and Lyudmila was also missing her tongue. The most bizarre part? There were no external signs of a struggle or impact. No bruises, no cuts on their skin. It was as if an immense force had crushed them from within. To make things even stranger, some of their clothing was found to contain low levels of radiation. The official Soviet investigation in 1959 was brief and perplexing. It concluded that the hikers had died as a result of a compelling unknown force. The case was then abruptly closed and classified, fueling decades of speculation and conspiracy theories. So what could this compelling unknown force have been? Let's explore the most prominent theories, starting with the most scientific. The most widely accepted rational explanation is an avalanche, specifically a slab avalanche. The theory goes that a slab of snow cracked and slid down onto the tent. This wouldn't have been a huge, dramatic avalanche, but enough to create a terrifying crushing sound and the real fear of being buried alive. This would explain their panicked exit, slashing the tent from the inside because the entrance might have been blocked. Fleeing downhill is a natural reaction. The internal injuries of the last 4 could be explained if they fell into the ravine during the chaotic escape in the darkness. But this theory has holes. The slope where the tent was pitched was not particularly steep, making a natural avalanche unlikely. The search party found no evidence of an avalanche. Also, why would they run a full mile away from their shelter instead of just digging it out? And what about the missing body parts and the radiation? Another scientific theory involves something called infrasound. This is sound at a frequency so low humans can't hear it, but it can have strange physical and psychological effects. Certain wind patterns, like a Kármán vortex street whipping around the mountain peak, could theoretically generate powerful infrasound. This could induce feelings of intense panic, dread, and nausea, compelling the hikers to flee their tent for no apparent reason. It's a fascinating idea, but there's no direct evidence it happened, and it doesn't fully explain the severe internal injuries or the radiation. Of course, given the Cold War era, theories involving military involvement are rampant. Was this a secret weapons test gone wrong? The area was not a known test site, but that doesn't rule out a covert operation. Perhaps a parachute mine, a concussive weapon, exploded nearby. This could explain the powerful internal injuries without external marks, and the bright flash and deafening boom could have sent them running in terror. The radiation on their clothes could also be a byproduct of such a weapon. This would also explain why the investigation was so quickly shut down and classified by the Soviet authorities. They would have every reason to cover up such a disastrous and illegal test. Some locals even reported seeing strange orange spheres or lights in the sky around the time of the incident, adding fuel to the fire of a military or even an extraterrestrial explanation. And that brings us to the more fringe supernatural theories. The local Mansi people have legends about the spirits of the mountain, and even stories of a menk, their version of a Russian yeti or abominable snowman. Could the hikers have stumbled upon something they weren't meant to see? A creature that attacked them, causing them to flee? While this captures the imagination, there were no animal tracks found, nor any footprints other than those of the hikers themselves. The nature of the injuries, especially the precise and brutal internal damage, doesn't really line up with an animal attack. So where does that leave us? Each theory seems to explain a piece of the puzzle, but none of them fits perfectly. The avalanche theory struggles with the location and lack of evidence. The infrasound theory doesn't account for the physical trauma. The military test theory explains the secrecy and injuries, but lacks concrete proof. And the supernatural theories remain just that, stories without evidence. In 2019, the Russian government reopened the case, concluding once again that an avalanche was the most likely culprit, combined with low visibility, causing the group to get lost after fleeing the tent. But for many, this conclusion feels too simple, too neat for a mystery with so many jagged edges. The story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident endures because it's a perfect storm of mystery. It has brave young explorers, a remote and hostile environment, and a set of clues that are both specific and deeply contradictory. The photos they left behind show them smiling, building their camp, living their adventure, completely unaware of the horror that was about to befall them. It is a chilling reminder of how quickly the world can turn from known and safe to terrifying and inexplicable. What do you think happened on that frozen mountain slope? Was it a natural disaster, a military secret, or something else entirely? The truth, it seems, remains buried in the snows of Dead Mountain. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's most chilling unsolved cases. If you have your own theories, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more mysteries. See you next time.